So, what is it that really holds up our system of governance? What keeps the whole thing running? Well, it all comes down to two essential pillars: aptitude, the actual skill and potential to govern, and foundational values, which is the moral compass that points all that skill in the right direction. Let's dig in. You've probably heard this famous quote from Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. It's so powerful because it's so true. Civil servants are literally the steel frame holding our entire society together. And this isn't some abstract idea, right? It affects everything, from the hospitals we go to the roads we drive on. This framework holds immense power and responsibility for the nation's progress. And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What keeps that steel frame from rusting out? Because when that immense power isn't guided by a really strong ethical core, the system doesn't just bend, it breaks. Unchecked power, it just leads to corruption and misuse. And that undermines the entire purpose of having a government in the first place.
So to create public servants who can actually handle this kind of power responsibly, we first need to understand their essential blueprint. And it's made of two core components: their aptitude and their values.
Okay, think of it like this. Aptitude is all about competence. It's the potential to do a job well. But values, that's about character, the principles that decide how that job gets done. One without the other is kind of useless, right? A truly great public servant has to have both. Let's break down aptitude a little more. It's not just about what you already know. It's about your potential to learn and tackle new things. For a civil servant today, that means having the capacity to manage, say, a crazy complex supply chain during a pandemic, or figuring out how to use AI for better policy, or overseeing a massive infrastructure project. And on the other side of the coin, you've got foundational values. These are the deep down beliefs that make sure a civil servant is working for the public good, not for themselves. So if aptitude is the engine with all the horsepower, values are the steering wheel, making sure all that power is actually going in the right direction. Okay, so what are these specific values? What's on this moral compass we keep talking about? Let's take a look at the actual principles that are supposed to guide every single decision. A really great place to start is the UK's Nolan Principles. These have pretty much become the international gold standard for public service ethics. They create a framework for everything, from acting selflessly for the public to being totally transparent and accountable for what you do. Now, building on those international standards, India developed its own framework. It didn't just copy and paste. The Second Administrative Reforms Commission, or ARC, recognized India's unique challenges and tailored a set of values specifically for Indian governance. And here you can see the core expectations. You've got the big ones, like integrity and impartiality. Those are complete non-negotiables. But what's really important here is that the ARC also stresses empathy and compassion, especially for the weaker sections of society. That's a crucial reminder that governance has to be humane. I love this quote. It just perfectly captures what integrity is all about. It's not about putting on a show or following the rules only when your boss is watching. It's that deep personal promise to yourself to do the right thing. And honestly, that's the absolute bedrock of public trust in government. Now, it's one thing to sit here and talk about these values in theory, but what happens when they get put to the test? In the messy, high-stakes, real world of public service. If you want a perfect example of this, look no further than T.N. Session, India's 10th Chief Election Commissioner. The man is a legend for embodying the value of impartiality, and he completely reformed India's entire electoral process against unbelievable resistance. What he did was absolutely transformative. He strictly enforced the election code of conduct, which was a huge deal. He brought in voter IDs to cut down on fraud and put a cap on how much money candidates could spend. He basically showed everyone how a single person, totally driven by impartiality, could clean up an entire system. But let's be real for a second. What Session did was incredibly difficult. Every single civil servant faces a gauntlet of challenges every day that test their commitment to these values. I mean, these are the forces that are always trying to weaken that steel frame. You've got political pressure pushing you to bend the rules, your own personal biases can creep in, and you might have a conflict of interest that threatens your integrity, all while trying to make tough calls with not enough time or money. Upholding values in the face of all that, that's the real test. So, this brings us all the way back to the main point. To forge a truly strong, resilient steel frame for our government, you can't treat aptitude and values like two separate things. They have to be fused together. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? Someone with all the integrity in the world but no knowledge, well, they can't actually get the job done. They're ineffective. But someone with tons of knowledge and no integrity, that's not just ineffective, that is actively dangerous. They have the skills to cheat the system and cause enormous harm.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to this simple but incredibly powerful formula. Good governance is not an either-or situation. It absolutely requires the combination of skill, which comes from aptitude, and character, which is guided by foundational values. That is the winning combination.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. As the world gets more and more complicated and the pressures on our public servants just keep growing, which of these core values do you think is facing the greatest test? Is it integrity in a world with so many temptations? Or is it impartiality when society feels so divided? Something to think about.